Welcome guys to Surface and Modern Management for Healthcare. My name's Andrew Charles and I'll be one of your presenters today. We have with us as well Simon Koss, who is a health industry expert, a doctor from Microsoft Australia, who's going to really do a bit of a deep dive into Microsoft and health, as well as Aaron Polley, who's one of our senior senior pre-sales engineers based up in Queensland, but it's a national resource for CompNow and is an absolute expert when it comes to designing very complex Microsoft workflows. So guys, we're going to take you through agenda at a high level. We're going to cover off Surface in healthcare after we briefly touch on CompNow and a little bit about what we do around Microsoft. We're going to touch on the Surface family, give you a quick update around Laptop 4, Surface Pro 7 Plus, Surface Go and Surface Hub. We're going to have a chat about remote work with Microsoft Teams, some very interesting facts and features there. Modern management, do a bit of a dive into Azure directory. It's going to be a little bit technical, but that's why we've got Aaron. Zero-touch deployment with Windows Autopilot, Surface security, Surface device as a service. That's definitely an area that I'm very passionate about. And then CompNow modern solutions, a quick wrap up and some Q&A at the end. So guys, a little bit about CompNow. As you know, we're 100% Australian owned. We've been in business for over 30 years. We're one of Microsoft's most well-established Surface partners in Australia, and we're the first, very proud to say this, ASP for Microsoft. That's going to really take our relationship to the whole next level. We've got over 200, or actually over 300 staff now. Half our staff are technical resources. And if you look at our service desk, we actually go out of our way and we have a very high complement of female engineers. About 35% of our engineers on that service desk are female. We've got over 50 dedicated account managers looking after all of our customers nationally. As you know, we've got offices all around Australia and comprise of 8 different business units, those being engineering, education, corporate and government, service centres, audio-visual, training, professional learning, health and aged care, and obviously business development that really allows us to get very creative when we're working with Microsoft and working with ITSM tools like ServiceNow and ConnectWise, and being able to integrate workflows directly into someone's service desk. We'll touch on that a little bit later in the presentation. So our Microsoft partnership, very proud to say that we were named last year Modern Solutions Partner of the Year for 2020. That little statement there, CompNow consistently demonstrated their ongoing commitment to both Microsoft and their customers. Being Modern Solutions Partner of the Year is definitely a huge accolade for CompNow. It was actually CompNow's first global award, and we're very, very proud to be able to beat our chests a little bit and work with our valued customers in the marketplace to really deliver some very exciting solutions. We're also a global training partner, and as I briefly mentioned earlier, we're a Microsoft Surface authorised service provider. We're the first one in Australia, the first reseller for Microsoft to be given that title or that certification that will allow us to take the new Surface product portfolio and build some really complex and exciting managed services solutions around those, as well as bring those devices back in-house to any of our service centres nationally and help you as a customer get the most out of your fleet of Microsoft devices. We're also a Surface Hub reseller and integrator. Again, we have a very mature AV team here at CompNow and can build out some really exciting Teams workflows utilising the Surface Hub technology. So, very exciting start to this webinar. I'm delighted to have Dr. Simon Koss, who's a health industry executive for Microsoft. He really leads that charge within Microsoft around working with health organisations, whether it's aged care or large hospitals or private healthcare environments, and help them really understand where that health market is heading in line with Microsoft's vision and strategy. So without further ado, Simon, I'm going to hand over to you to go through the next slides. Thanks.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Simon Koss, Microsoft's clinical lead here in Australia, and we're here today to talk about a really important topic, clinical mobility. Early on in my medical career, I actually started practicing with paper notes. And paper notes, as limiting as they were at the time, actually were quite elegant from a clinical mobility perspective. Think about it. I had the entire patient file in the palm of my hand. I could take that around with me right to the patient bedside, At the patient bedside, I could privately consume information, and if I needed to create information, I could create rich content on the fly quickly and easily. It's interesting to see the maturity journey as we've gone down digitisation in healthcare. We've deployed a lot of electronic medical records, and initially we didn't complement them with the right sort of mobility solution to have that same level of clinical mobility. We now know that providing desktop-based terminals at the nurse's station isn't the best way. You actually have to go see the patient, make your decisions. If you're missing information, dash back there, and then there's terminal clutter as people try and line up for access. That doesn't work. That's not a productive way of providing patient care for those ward-based clinicians who are providing direct patient care. Then we complemented it with workstations on wheels, so essentially carts with laptops, and they can be cumbersome given some ward situations. On other wards, they work really well. We are now at the stage where devices have caught up with the mobility that we need to provide. Initially, we provided devices that are good for consuming content at the bedside, but you actually need some horsepower if you're to go and record rich content at the bedside. In the last 12 months, more than ever, we've challenged our traditional work styles and recognised that we actually need to make use of this digital data asset in those new models of care, whether that's virtual patient consultations and telehealth, which has become so ubiquitous, or whether it's connecting with our care teams, either in ad hoc type of communications for consults or collaboration, or more structured digital learning and rounding. You need the right sort of device to complement that work style. And of course, it does need to be kept secure. This is one of the great challenges. So today, we're going to talk through Surface devices in healthcare. And you're going to see how those Surface devices balance the two priorities. From an end user perspective, you need a device that is powerful enough to do the work that you need to do. Not just present information to you to consume, but provide you all of the tools to be able to create your own information and rich content where you need to do it, whether that's at the bedside or outside the four walls of the hospital. That device increasingly needs to support communications and collaboration. And from that perspective, you need to be able to hear what's going on, and you need to be able to communicate and that to be captured with clarity. So that's important from an end user perspective. A device that fits your work style, whether that's a whiteboarding type of situation if you're working in a group setting, or whether it's a mobile device on the go, or a functional desktop device while you've got your clinical administration time. The right device needs to support your workflow and your job requirements at the time. The flip side is those devices actually need to be manageable from a corporate enterprise perspective and secure. So that's why the Surface family that provisions everything from those ultra mobile devices that can be used on the go to create content with a pen, all the way up to clinical workstations and whiteboard style hub devices. We'll have a look at all of those today. And these are coming together, not just here in Australia, but all around the world. Places are finding that as their modern work styles evolve and increasingly the digital record becomes an important part of that care, the device becomes the right factor to ensure that we deliver to the final mile and you get a great clinical experience. And so whether that's here in Australia or out in the NHS, organisations from all around the world are finding that more mature perspective about the right device for the right person in the right context, and that device lighting up scenarios for clinical communication, collaboration, teaming, and digital work styles.
Thanks, Simon. That was fantastic. So guys, why Surface? So as you know, Microsoft has built a incredibly robust and complex application ecosystem that exists in the cloud. As Satya often calls it, it's the world's computer. And then to add to that, we now have the ability to provide you an exceptionally mature portfolio of Surface devices. You know, everything from the Go all the way through to the Surface Pro Plus 7. So again, you know, the users who love our products, you know, at the very entry level there, you've got the Surface Go 2, great product to offer to mobile caregivers and telehealth workers, as well as patients and nurses. You know, as we move forward through that portfolio, we have the new Surface Pro 7 Plus. There's some unbelievable new functionality that's built into that new device from Microsoft, as well as CompNow being able to very easily service that technology, whether that's on-site or bringing that technology back to base. And then you move into that traditional ecosystem of Surface Laptop 4 and Surface Book. And you know, the new Surface Book is not far away. Currently we're on Series 3 of the Surface Book, and that's now all underpinned in that collaborative workflow, leveraging the new Surface Hub 2S product across the 50-inch and 85-inch designs. Again, you know, this is all backed up with some exceptional accessories for healthcare. You know, there's a full range of you know, ruggedized cases and mounts, privacy screens and charging solutions that really cover every single dynamic that's required within that healthcare landscape. And as we know, you know, the healthcare market at the moment is probably a little bit behind where the rest of the market is. So there's plenty of money to be spent on these new solutions, which will really enable health to carry their patients, their staff, and their customers forward. So Surface Pro 7 Plus, you know, there's a whole plethora of you know, features there. I'm not going to cover all of them now, but just some big ones to call out. Obviously, the fact that you're now getting you know, 15 hours battery life. The device does last all day. Removable SSD, and you know, you can scale it out to 16 gig of RAM, and also comes with a terabyte of storage that you can configure the device to. Really vibrant 12.3 pixel sense display touchscreen with ambient light sensing, and also, you know, dual far field studio mics. So again, you know, if you like that Surface Studio experience, you can actually deliver that performance now on the Surface Pro 7 Plus. So fantastic device, something definitely worth considering. So you know, please feel free to ask any questions at the end of this presentation, or reach out to your local CompNow BDM to either get a sample unit to have a play with, or to assess in a bit more detail. Surface Hub 2S family, I love the Surface Hub. I started playing with the Surface Hub over 5 years ago, the Surface Hub 1 with Teams. You know, the workflows that you can deliver are ridiculously creative. Microsoft has streamlined the technology now. You know, they're beautiful devices, you know, with the steel case stand, the portable steel case stand for the 2S 50-inch and the wall-mounted 2S 85-inch. Absolutely taking that Surface Hub experience to the next level. You know, when you're running in conjunction with that Teams and a 365 experience, really no creative workflow is out of bounds anymore. And you know, the collaboration that you can generate and develop in conjunction, you know, with your teams nationally, whatever workflow that you have in mind, nothing is out of bounds. So I strongly suggest, if you haven't had an update from CompNow's AV team around the Surface Hub portfolio, again, you know, we'll take questions after this webinar today, but please reach out to your local CompNow BDM and set up a time to either come into one of our showrooms nationally and have a look at the Surface Hub technology, or just you know, ask for a demo, you know, and we'll work through those workflows with you. So remote working with Microsoft Teams, you know, really interesting topic. Again, there are so many features and functions to get across. The good news is that within CompNow we have a dedicated team of professional learning officers that can really sit there and help you get the most out of that team's environment, whether it's video conferencing, screen sharing, developing customised backgrounds, file sharing, apps and workflows, and privacy and security. There's so much technology that's gone into Teams. Getting the most out of it is critical. So, if you are running an E3 or an E5 license across your business, you do have access to that Teams portfolio. If you've invested in the Microsoft Surface ecosystem and the Surface Hub technology, it's really important that we get that training methodology right for your business. So again, please reach out to your CompNow BDM and set up a time for us to take you through how we can help you get the most out of Teams and that hardware technology platform. So guys, we're going to move now into a little bit more technical discussion around modern endpoint management. And I'm really delighted to have Aaron Polley, who's one of our senior systems engineers based in Queensland, but since the COVID bans are slowly releasing, he's on a plane pretty much every week, or he's on a Teams call every day, working with our teams nationally and helping our customers design and deliver some very, very complex modern endpoint management solutions. So Aaron, I'm going to hand over to you to talk about this in a bit of detail. Thanks.
Thanks, Charles. It was really great to get those comments from Simon up top to really, I guess, give us some context and understanding of what's going on in the industry. And thank you for your intro and discussion around Surface as a family and what value it brings. So where I'm going to come in here is talk about modern endpoint management. So modern deployment and management, it's another term that we use for it. And it's really just to, I guess, take all these pieces together, take all the value that we have in all these amazing technology, hardware, software, tooling that we've talked about and how it applies to the healthcare industry. But take that next step and going, great, this all sounds great, but Aaron, how can I actually take all this and get it into my environment? How can I do that and do that in an efficient way? So as we all know, IT environments are complicated. They're not straightforward. They have all sorts of elements to them around legacy, existing technology, stuff that's just good enough that, it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of mentality. And often a fragmentation of different vendor solutions and tools to try and just get stuff done. And we can all appreciate that sometimes the outcome is focused on, or should I say all the time, the outcome is focused on more than the means, right? But you and I know as professionals that there comes a time when the tools may not be right, and we need to assess that. Moving on from that kind of framing of a thought of an IT environment, enters Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So Endpoint Manager is here to be a collection of tools to manage devices that we all need to use every day. That looks like Microsoft Intune, something that you may have heard about before that resides in the cloud and can manage devices. That looks like Configuration Manager, formerly known as SCCM, and some other tools inside of the Microsoft Endpoint Manager platform that really help to bring to life the status, the manageability, and the configurations of your fleet, how large or small. Now, when we tie this into a Surface dialogue, there's some cool things that Microsoft Endpoint Manager provide to Surface. So one of these things is around the DFCI and cloud UEFI management. So the UEFI is effectively BIOS, right? It's the thing that lives on that low layer of the hardware before we get into Windows 10. And the cool thing with Surface and Microsoft Endpoint Manager is we actually have the ability to manage those settings from the cloud. So for any of you on this webinar or any of your colleagues that have gone through the process of deploying new devices before, we know that one of the fundamental things in past you would have to do is make sure that someone can't just grab your device and change its low-level settings. BIOS passwords, things like that would help prevent that. And what we have today with Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Surface devices is actually the ability to take that and manage that from the cloud, which means we don't need to touch that device that one time from an IT perspective to set these secure settings. And this is going to come into play a bit later as we talk about how this ties into the bigger picture. So to really understand, I suppose, the cloud and the cloud's power, let's have a look at what is inside Microsoft Endpoint Manager in the larger Azure stack. So we have Azure Active Directory. It is the collection of users, devices, and groups. So much like probably many of you with an on-premise Active Directory, a similar idea where it is the collection of those three key things, but in the cloud. And has a lot more scalability and a lot more functionality than what your traditional on-premise Active Directory can do, such as multi-factor authentication. Now, I know inside of a healthcare environment, my wife is actually a nurse, so I relate to this industry quite well, that when people are going through, say, a hospital, and they're just trying to get the job done, trying to go from bed to bed in a ward, just doing their OBS or whatever it is they need to do in the case of a nurse, for example, trying to jump and grab their device that they're using, for example, to check patient records or other things. That process needs to be both seamless and secure. If there's any hurdles there, they don't get time for that. They don't have the ability to go, oh, let me just muck around for 5, 10, 20 minutes. They need to get on to the next patient. They need to make sure that the people in your care are being looked after. So having a seamless way of not only authenticating into that device to say who they are and get access to the right sensitive details, but also to do that securely. And Azure and Microsoft have some great tools, such as a notification pop-up to a phone, to be that second factor, to be that, are you really who you say you are? And that's some amazing things that apply directly to the healthcare industry. So beyond that, as we've mentioned at the start, Intune Configuration Manager, Microsoft Endpoint Manager, collectively known as, they have a direct integration with Azure Active Directory to make sure that the right permissions and settings are coming through to the configurations and applications that you're pushing down to your devices. So there is, as this diagram shows, a collection of device settings, the authorization for that, and the authorization for the devices and the users. And we'll explore more of this as we go on. So as we said, Azure Active Directory has some capabilities here that are really, really important inside of the Intune, and as you can see here, Autopilot, which we'll talk about a bit more. And the key thing here is that users have the ability to join or associate or bind is a legacy term to Azure Active Directory, and we can ensure that user-based scope for the apps and the settings that we need is in place, and that device-based scope is there to automatically associate with Intune and Azure and get going. And we'll talk a bit more about this dream scenario as we go. So Intune is a user-driven process, or I should say is best emphasized that way. And we get the ability to have user-driven Windows Autopilot profiles assigned to a device. So what that means is I can turn on a device, I can associate as who I am, and then start to get the settings and the applications that I need. We have an enrollment settings as part of this process that helps facilitate that. And we can deploy device firmware. So talking about the Surface family and the UEFI settings that we talked about before, that all kind of ties in this piece and what we can do straight out of the box, straight from the cloud to the device. So in terms of some of the kind of ongoing, hey, yeah, deploying devices, great. What's some of the stuff we have in here ongoing? So we have, as we said, the comprehensive controls and rich analysis around the status of the fleet. So it's never a case of, oh, I knew I did this thing at this point in time to these devices. We get real-time stats on the health and the status of the devices a few clicks away. So really, really powerful to have that at your fingertips as administrator and management of these devices. As we said, we can remotely manage these devices when it comes to the Surface family, with a few notable exceptions, but largely on all major new platforms and devices, of the Surface family. So we've talked about a bit of the architecture, a bit of an understanding of the cloud environment of Endpoint Manager and Azure. Let's really kind of piece this all together and understand where the real value starts to come in. So from a traditional deployment model, we have a pretty, I guess, standard tried, tested, true process that you generally see across the industry, healthcare included, that will have a way to deploy new devices on scale. So it often would look like building an image, so a set of drivers and settings and policies and applications for a device that you want to rinse and repeat across different devices. You would deploy that image, that set of settings and apps to a new device through a few different means. Could be over network, could be by USB stick, etc. And then, as I said before, rinse and repeat. So create that one set of things, settings, applications in an operating system image, put it on a device, make sure it's all good, and then continue on to multiple devices. That was great. And look, CompNow may even facilitate that process for you now, but there is a new way and there is a better way, and we're trying to encourage all of our customers to move toward it. What that is a modern deployment zero-touch model. So instead of building an image, so a copy of the operating system of all those settings and apps, we build profiles. So we build profiles that list these settings inside of Microsoft Endpoint Manager, the right apps and the right settings that need to go down to that device. We then don't need to actually touch any of these new devices. We can have them straight out of the box, turn on, associate with Autopilot, Intune, usually with a user association, and then we just play some Xbox. As you see, you can do whatever you want, really. But the point is, we don't actually need to touch and prepare these devices. We can just set all the settings in the cloud, get them to turn on, and then go on with the other more important tasks that we have to do to enrich technology and environment, not just manage and maintain it. So what does this look like when a Surface and its life cycle? So what stages it goes through inside of your organization. So the life cycle of a Surface with Autopilot, we can let's look at a couple of things that need to occur. So we need to, one, make sure that a partner, so such as CompNow, has entered the details of that device into your Microsoft Azure portal. Alternatively, you can do that yourself, but the reason why we recommend ourselves as the partner to do it for you is that the device does not need to be touched. In the customer-driven scenario, so you uploading those details yourself, you actually have to open the box, run a script, find out the unique details of that device. Whereas for us on the partner end, we actually have a high level of access, if you like, because there's a high level of trust on the fact that we've already done other processes to establish trust between us as the reseller and you as the customer. And we have the ability then to put those devices straight in and without the need to touch again, to make sure that the least touch on the device possible is achieved. So when we look what that looks like on the life cycle, we basically have this process where a device is purchased is configured from us. So we work with you to make sure that the right settings, applications, etc. are there. You then purchase that device and we can ship it directly to the end user. From that point, all the settings and applications that we've set inside of Microsoft Azure, inside of Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Intune for you, will come down to that device. So the user will turn on the device, they'll associate as who they are, and these different settings now will come down. So what we can see here is that when our example person here, Anna, when she opens that device, she associates as who she is, she signs in. It knows that she is a salesperson, she's in the sales part of the organization. So she'll get all the correct settings and applications for that. So it's not based on the device, serial XYZ, it's based on Anna as the user that was the first person to turn on and associate with this device. After a few minutes, she's ready to go. All the settings, all the applications that she needs have come down, and anything further can be self-served from the Microsoft company portal. So that's all well and good. However, we all know that staff may not actually exceed in their tenure to your business the life cycle of the device. Sometimes they may only use it for a few months. Sometimes they may use it for a few years. If it's a shared device, then a few different people are going to be using it. The key thing here to understand is that inside of a modern deployment management scenario, that's okay. And we actually have a solution for that. So say Anna leaves, right? All we have to do is initiate a reset from the cloud and the device will reset itself. So operating system, everything stays intact. But the settings and applications that were specific to Anna no longer need to be there and are cleared out. A new person comes through, Raul, and he's actually a member of the IT department. He signs into the device, and then suddenly he gets a different set of settings, a different set of applications, if it's appropriate, and the device is now associated to him as the end user. This process can happen multiple times through the life of the device. And what's really, really powerful here is from the life cycle and cost of the device and the cost of the services around the device, we now have a really powerful, flexible, and simple model to take a device out of the box that we did not have to touch and prepare before it was handed to the end user. And if that end user moves on and the end user changes, it's as simple as a command from the cloud to reset that device and get it ready for the next person. Now that's extremely powerful. So when the device reaches its end of life, no worries. Let's go through a process of recycling it, disposing of it in an environmentally friendly way, and you can continue on to the next device. So from an overall snapshot, what do we have here? So we have a process where you, as a customer, choose the right partner, aka CompNow, to be the relationship that is used to develop this environment, to get all the right settings, all the right applications inside of your Microsoft Endpoint Manager environment. From there, we help you configure your sales, your IT, your HR, all your different departments, different segmentations of settings. In the healthcare industry, obviously, we have varying levels of frontline support, different roles and responsibilities there. With that process, we can then have that sent straight to the first end user. It can use the device. It can be reset from the cloud for the next end user. And then when that device is ready and it's been reset as many times as required, for as many different people as required, it can then be disposed of and recycled in a environmentally friendly way. All of this can be something that us as CompNow's department can assist you with. We'll talk a bit more about that later. So that's great for a one-to-one use case. I mentioned at the start that we had some shared models as well. So self-deploying mode, a kiosk mode, is another element or another journey that you can take inside of the autopilot process. So instead of expecting for a user to identify as who they are and go through that process, you can, with that device, say, hey, this is actually going to be a shared device, and it's going to be used in a kiosk manner. Really easy, again, to configure, associate it to the relevant device ID that again gets registered by your partner ahead of time, so that when that device actually gets turned on for the first time, it goes straight into that kiosk mode or that digital signage mode or shared user mode without having to have that initial user and one-to-one relationship association, but allowing either no user or many users to log in and out, just as you're used to on other forms of deployment. So, Surface. Where does Surface very specifically fit in this Windows Autopilot story? To be honest and to be frank, Microsoft built Surface with Autopilot in mind and vice versa. It really is a case where they were better together, built together to really prove what could be done with a Windows 10 device and the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Intune Autopilot stack. So Surface is fully designed for it. It ships with a signature image. So in other words, just has Windows 10 and Office on it. It doesn't have any other bloatware or other things on the device that some vendors may choose to put on the device. And we get that extra technical toggle, if you like, of the firmware being managed from the cloud. So again, no mucking around with BIOS passwords. Really does provide the best enrollment and ongoing lifecycle management inside of a Windows 10 fleet. So, Aaron, this is great. I'm getting excited. How do I get here? Well, one of the first things you need to do is make sure you have the right licensing. Now, the good news is most environments, most organizations that already have a footprint with Office 365, most actually already have access to what they need. So the two key things from an autopilot perspective are Azure Active Directory and mobile device management, aka an MDM, aka Intune or Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So in order to associate a device requires Azure Active Directory P1 subscription and a mobile device management solution, aka Intune. For most people, this looks like, as I said, licensing that they already have, or looks like an add-on that they can provide. So if you have kind of a lower tier of Office licensing, you can add these elements on. Or if you're already a subscriber of one of the E3, E5, F3, A3, or A5 license SKUs, or the business premium SKUs as well, all of this is already included. So just look for Office 365 versus Microsoft 365, because there are some differences there. But all in all, if you have one of these tiers, you've already got it. If you don't, if you have a lower tier, it's pretty easy to add on. So I guess a really important thing to think about in a COVID-19 or post-COVID-19 world is really this shift to remote work. And it's really important to Microsoft that there is cloud-to-chip security, that real integration between the hardware and the software to be secure. There's been plenty of stories, and even I think in this past week where we were doing this recording, of some breaches in the US. You know, there's plenty of adversaries out there right now trying to take advantage of this new normal. And any organizations that are ready for it, haven't prepared for it, tend to become a target. Whereas if you go in straight in with an intentional cloud strategy with your devices for remote work, and for in the case of healthcare, that could look like home care. That could still look like hospital care, aged care, etc. It can be quite diverse. The key is that as we're adopting these new technologies that we're forced to in a COVID-19 world, that they are secure And this is something that's really passionate for Microsoft and the Surface family and the 365 environment. So as there is this clear need, we can see that Microsoft have really thought about this process. So let's talk through this real high level. Microsoft have designed and built all the physical components in the case of Surface. So they're able to implement factory level security protocols and inspection. So i.e. a malicious actor isn't trying to inject their code, for example, into a brand new device before you even touch it. We have advanced Windows security factory enabled, which again means that there is a software layer here of protection that's intentional for Microsoft. We have ultimate control via device management. So out of that box, auto enrolled with Autopilot. We now have this end-to-end from the factory security model that Microsoft is extremely intentional with, because it has the full control from the hardware to the software to the cloud. Cloud to chip security is built into the DNA of Surface for many of the reasons I just said, of that hardware, firmware to operating system to cloud architecture. And look, finally, reduce risk and lower costs with 365 devices. What this really means is, hey, let's take this holistic picture. Let's take this idea that it's a Microsoft stack from cradle to grave, is the term I like to use, from its inception to when it eventually retires. And we have this full picture of how a device can almost effortlessly be purchased, turned on, enabled for use by the end user, and for as many end users as are needed for the life cycle of the device. We see, as you see more stats here, around the reduction in security breaches and spend on these areas through using this unified architecture. So hopefully that's gotten you inspired and excited of this dream of how to take a device out of the box, associate who you are, get what you need, and get going. Let's talk more, and I'll hand back to Charlesy to do this for you, about how CompNow can wrap this story in a CompNow piece for you in our device as a service. Charlesy, over to you.
Thanks, Aaron. That was absolutely awesome. I'm sure a lot of you now have a lot of questions around how we can help. So how can we help you guys? So firstly, guys, I'm going to talk to you briefly about device as a service. CompNow has a very mature device as a service model that we developed quite a number of years ago. There are a few key components to that. One is the contract. We put a lot of energy and time into developing our DAS contract. It is a non-disclosed contract. That contract is with CompNow and yourself as the end user. It allows you to wrap in any portfolio of devices. In this case today, we're talking about the Microsoft portfolio. That could be the new Surface Pro 7 Plus, Surface Laptop 4, Surface Hubs, and Surface Go 2. Any layer of software that you want there, whether it's any 365 application suite, it could be Adobe, it could be Sophos, whatever you want, you can throw it in there. You can add in the services. It's like building a giant cake, right? Throw in all the ingredients, right? And at the very end, we add in the term, right? That term, it can be flexible. It can be as little as 6 months or as long as 60 months. So just think about that. You can build this gigantic Microsoft cake. You don't have to worry about the device in any way, shape or form. CompNow takes all the management responsibilities away from you as the end user, and we literally manage that asset over the course of its life cycle. So again, to back this up, CompNow has its own portal technology that we spent many, many years developing with API integration into the likes of ServiceNow. So your entry level is the CompNow portal. That portal shows things like invoices, open orders, devices. You can book a repair, look at outstanding job repairs, look at any serial number for any asset that may exist under there. We've even developed an asset tracking tool that's also available. So very exciting. You add that to DAS and you've got this seamless window to manage all of your end user assets over the course of their life cycle. CompNow's procurement cycle, I'll touch on this very briefly, but from a Microsoft device as a service perspective, we've got obviously the Surface endpoint, supply of the device. Again, that takes into consideration the catalog, the portal, buffer stock, forecasting, delivery, configuration. So that can be many different services, anything from asset tagging to imaging, BIOS updates, electrical test and tag. Installation, that can include things like pre-provisioning, installing different packages, attaching it to a network, transferring data, and then end of life, obviously removal, recycle, repurpose, trade-in, lease and secure wipe. And then lastly, the support function, which really wraps that service together and is all billed and collected through the CompNow DAS contract. So mobile device management. CompNow is considered in the marketplace today to be an absolute leader in mobile device management. Many of you are still using SCCM, System Center Configuration Manager. However, CompNow has very deep technical capability, and Aaron just covered some of that around obviously Autopilot and Intune, as well as being a leader in VMware's Workspace ONE environment, or Workspace ONE's platform. Again, we can customize any Windows solution to any MDM that you may be running. That extends to things like SOTI or Workspace ONE. I'd suggest if you are interested in exploring how we can help design those workflows, again, reach out to your CompNow BDM, have a chat, and we'll make a time to send out one of our solutions architects out on site to talk about those workflows for you. Again, we briefly touched on this at the start of the presentation, but our professional development is key to this. Teams and the 365 ecosystem are very complex. There is a lot of software in there, and it's important that we really design and deliver the best training support that we can for your organisation. We can do things like quick start courses, refresher courses, advanced training, customised programs, and that's across 365 and Windows 10. We can design bespoke content, particularly when you've worked out the persona of your staff and the device and the application layer that's going to be critical to helping them succeed in their jobs. Again, finance options, near and dear to my heart. CompNow set up CompNow Finance 6 years ago. We have our own branded finance program. Again, that covers anything from master rental, master finance, and obviously device as a service offerings. So please reach out to your local CompNow BDM or reach out to Jamie Davis, who's our National Finance Manager at CompNow. Again, we'll happily talk about why it's important to look at a finance offering, particularly on Microsoft product. Again, if you do enter into a DAS or you enter into a master rental finance agreement, you really get to realise that future value of the technology from day one. And when you compare that to an OPEX versus CAPEX offering over 36 months, you'll find that when you add up all of those monthly payments over a 36-month period, it will be less than the initial cash payment if you're looking to CAPEX it. So again, there's some pros and cons behind that, so please reach out to CompNow and have a chat around that. Sustain IT, really important topic, guys. A number of years ago, we set up Sustain IT. It's our own asset, cradle to the grave, life cycle, recycling outfit within CompNow. Again, really, really critical. We can either free up trapped capital in any legacy technology that you have. Our BDMs can come out and give you a quote on any legacy technology, whether that's old Microsoft Surface devices, XT, Surface 1, Surface 2, Surface 3s, whether it's handset technology, Apple, Android handsets. We can certainly look at taking that technology off your hands, recycling it in an environmentally friendly way, certifying and data destroying the actual information on the device using Blanco, and then we can even take it as far as drilling the drives and certifying that those drives have been drilled, that no data will ever be lost or end up in the wrong hands. So please have a think about that. It's a massive issue at the moment around the world. E-waste, it's ridiculous. Sustain IT and CompNow are determined to make sure that we help as many Australian businesses as we can recycle or reuse their old technology assets. Just a few customers that have a modern workplace, Microsoft modern workplace. Some big names there, from the enterprise perspective, Cricket Australia, NAB, WorkPack, and then in the education space, Barker College, Rosebank, Innerborough School. There's some great testimonials on the CompNow website. These are just a couple of names. So please, jump on our website, have a look. There are a lot of testimonials across a lot of different customers and the way we've developed some modern workflows for them. All right, guys, so look, that's the end of the main content. Got some questions. The first question, Aaron, hospitals are moving from traditional paper-based records to e-records. Is it possible to do that if you're not utilising modern deployment methodologies like Autopilot and Intune?
Look, it definitely is, Charlesy. It's one of those things where is it possible versus is it better, right? And I think the key thing to understand is that with Autopilot and Intune, that is a cloud-first device methodology, right? So that's being able, as we've said, cradle to grave. In that initial life of that device, you can take the device and make sure that it is managed in a cloud-first way and is done securely. So if we look at the, importance of digital records and their sensitivity, we have a case where these devices, because they've been managed in a cloud-first secure way, have direct and prioritized access to those type of records. Whereas if you do device deployment and management in traditional ways, there's less of that real-time management of the device and more concerns around security in other areas, which we might talk about a bit later. But yeah, that's my answer. Anything, Simon, from your perspective, I guess, as a healthcare professional around that mobility idea that you gave us earlier?
Yeah, look, a couple of points. I'd call out in health, accidents happen and minutes matter. So for me, it's all about how quickly can we be productive. The patients are sick, the business in healthcare goes on, and clinicians won't wait. So you've got to get a functional device into their hands as soon as possible. If that's a new device, it's got to work. I've got low tolerance for something that doesn't have what I need, not my identity set up, the applications you need. And if it's someone else's device, I don't want to see someone else's data. And of course, if I'm handing back a device, a corporate device, don't let my sensitive information leak out elsewhere. I want it right properly, I want it handled securely. So auto matters.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks, guys. That's a really good response to that question. We've got a couple of other questions here that we'll quickly touch on. Simon, to you, what makes Microsoft Surface the ideal tool for on-the-go healthcare professionals?
So they say you should have 3 things. I've got 5. I want a device. I run a lot of apps, and some of those apps are hungry. And every time I've got browser open, there's multiple tabs. So give me something that's powerful enough. I don't want it stalling. From an interface perspective, it's not just mouse and keyboard. And I've got my time, but I want to get information in new and appropriate ways. So whether I'm using touch on the go or the pen as a precision pointing device, or whether I'm using my voice or camera, I need that sort of stuff. And on the voice and camera, collaboration is becoming increasingly important. Not just telehealth talking to patients, but if I'm talking to my peers, I need something that has a good mic, good camera, and a good display. I need to be able to do that in high fidelity. The device needs to be versatile. So sometimes I'm sitting in the car, but I'm also using the same device when I'm at home. Sometimes you'll catch me in the car. Sometimes I'm on the walk doing patient rounds. If you have a single device, I don't want to make compromises. It needs to do all the right things, all the right things. And then finally, security. I know that's important. I don't understand it, but I need to trust that someone has done their homework to make sure this is the right device for me. I'm using really sensitive data. They don't want to think about that, but I do want to know that everything's okay and I can get on business. Yeah.
Excellent answer, Simon. And look, that leads to the next question, which is a good segue around security. Aaron, I'm going to hand this question over to you, and that is, why is security so important in the healthcare sector?
Look, I think really to dovetail off of what Simon said earlier, it's that sensitivity of information. I mean, like he said, if my information is on someone's device, that's a very personal thing that's in your hands, and we have a duty of care to make sure that that's held securely and is not going to get in the wrong hands. So I think it's really important to understand that with that whole, cloud to chip architecture, chip to cloud architecture, that we talked about throughout the environment, it's really important to understand that it's a key element to this foundational layer of security. Security doesn't start, with the device. Security starts all the way back to whatever cloud platform or other system that device is accessing. It's a two-way street. And I think it's really important to make sure that you're doing that securely, and the entire Azure and 365 and Microsoft Surface, kind of that harmony of those components together has security in mind, right from the factory of the device, from the inception of how the cloud platform is built. Security is there in mind. And some key things, like I mentioned earlier, around multi-factor authentication. So not just putting in a username and password, but having a quick and effortless way to identify that you are who you say you are is really, really important, and really, really important in the context of us. Everyone's a bit of patient at some point, right? So us and our information inside of these healthcare systems.
That's a great answer, Aaron, and it kind of leads us into how important the device actually is, and when you look at that Surface ecosystem, it is a phenomenal portfolio, market leading without a shadow of a doubt. A question's come through for you, Dr. Simon, and that is around, as a doctor yourself, what does it mean to have an all-in-one device like a Surface laptop?
Yeah, so look, healthcare is digital, and my device is no longer an option. That's my continual companion. That's how I get stuff done. And I need that device to be capable. I need it to be reliable. It's got to be versatile. It's got to be secure. I'm inevitably going to turn up, and I'm going to leave my power source at home. I'm going to borrow a power source, and my organisation needs to recognise that this is a device that I'm using, and I'm going to have some redundant options. If I smash or break that device on the go, I don't want to have to learn a new device, all of that sort of stuff. And don't underestimate how important a good-looking device is. I've got an ego, and that's part of how I train myself, not just to my patients, but also my peers. So give me a great-looking device that I can buy.
Good to hear. We've got time, I think, for one more question today. And so someone from Microsoft's dropped this in. Aaron, this is for you. How does zero-touch deployment help the individual user as well as the organisation as a whole?
Look, that is a great question. And I think it's really just come back to, I spoke a lot of technical detail through that chunk of our webinar here, but just pull it back for a second to that experience, that overall dream, right? Of turn on a device, identify as who you are, and get access to what you need. 3 key steps. And I think that's extremely powerful, not only for the organization in terms of a low overhead, not only of cost, but of time to get that device up and running for a person, but also there's a level of ownership, a level of, hey, this is mine. I've taken this thing, I've configured it, not really, but they feel that way, right? Because they've grabbed it, they've popped in the username and password, and magic's happened, right? And I think that's extremely powerful in a level of ownership, and not only in healthcare, but in areas like education. We have proven stats that show when someone sees a level of ownership of a device, the actual breakage, damage, all of those elements actually decrease drastically. So to feel that level of ownership actually empowers the user and actually helps the organization at the same time. It's what we call a win-win.
Thanks, Aaron. Well, look, folks, today that concludes our webinar. I'd like to thank Aaron and Dr. Simon for spending time today to talk about healthcare solutions and those modern Microsoft deployment workflow methodologies. If you're very interested, as I'm sure you are, please reach out to your local CompNow BDM in your respective state, or jump onto our website, compnow.com.au, and ask as many questions as you can. Guys, it's been great talking to all of you. Until next time, thank you and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.